Beti Award for her efforts towards women empowerment through the use of radio. She works actively to promote the culture of research in her studies and in her subjects of mass communication. She is the member of the advisory board of the World Center for Academic Excellence and Research, advisory board of the Global Media Journal Indian edition. She is also a member of the editorial board of the Journal of Communication, among others. She is a regular invitee on the All India Radio and conducts workshops on the pronunciation and articulation for the news readers and anchors. My dear friends, you can, from her profile, from a very brief profile I have given to you, you can imagine the credibility of Dr. Archana R. Singh in engaging the session on articulation pronunciation. The persons who are whose business is to communicate through through the mass media, that is radio, the radio jockeys and the news readers. She is conducting workshops for them also. So I am sure I have opportunity to hear her at number of occasions, and I am sure that you will be all enjoying her this session, and also you will gain substantially from this session, and your articulation and pronunciation will also improve in the classroom. And I understand once the teachers are having right kind of articulation and pronunciation, the children pick up from the teachers, and their articulation and pronunciation skills will also improve. Now I invite Dr. Rachana R. Singh to kindly engage the session.
Thank you. I just move this.
No.
हाँ मैं बस ठीक okay. Good morning. I'll look at this, no?
No, the camera.
I look at the camera. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. I'm Archana, as sir has already given a very detailed and long introduction. And I'm going to talk about speaking. Okay. This is something we take for granted, you know. We think that speech is something which comes naturally. We have learnt it from our childhood, we have learnt it from our parents and our society around us, and something which, you know, we don't even really think about improving. We assume that we are good speakers just by virtue of having knowledge of speech, or by virtue of having the speech organs, you know. We just assume that we are speaking well. So today I'm going to talk about effective speech. Okay. What are the main ingredients that are needed for effective speech? Okay. I have given a sentence over here. I would like you to experience this sentence. Now, I'm not saying speak it. I'm not saying just hear it. I'm saying experience it. Okay. Neuroplastic mechanisms relevant to growing number of empirical studies of the capacity of directed attention and mental effort systematically alter brain function. How is this sentence? Did you enjoy this sentence? Did you enjoy the experience of this sentence? Did you like it? Most importantly, did you understand it? I'm sure on one reading, none of us has understood this sentence. I have not understood it either, you know. Now, if I have to understand it, I have to read it once again. Maybe once again, maybe once again. So if I have to read something several times, even if I have to hear something several times in order to understand, then something is wrong with the message. This is not an effective sentence. This is not a good sentence for speaking. Okay, so most of the words in this sentence are barely registering in the brain. They are not doing anything for us to understand the message behind the sentence. So this is not a good idea, you know, making long sentences like this one. So I'm talking about now the key elements. There are 8 key elements of highly effective speech that I'm going to look at one by one, starting with gentle eye contact. Gentle eye contact, of course, you know, without needing an expert to tell you this, you already know this. You already know that if somebody looks at you in the eye and says something, you have more trust in that person. you feel that this is a believable conversation. But if somebody is shifty eyed, looking somewhere else while speaking, you somehow don't trust them. So this is the first thing in effective speaking. Look at your audience in the eye. Gentle eye contact, a kind facial expression. Your facial expression should not be aggressive, should not be such that makes the puts off the other person immediately. So there has to be a kind facial expression, which means the muscles of your face, around the eyes, around the lips, around the mouth, should be relaxed, not tense. Warm tone of voice. Tone of voice is very important, and this can be cultivated, how we want to keep our voice. So a warm tone of voice which shows the interest in the communication. Expressive hand and body gestures. You have to be comfortable with yourself, first of all, in order to make the other person feel comfortable. And for that, you need to have very positive gestures of your hands, your facial expression, and your entire body. See, when a message starts in the brain, it doesn't really come out only through the mouth. The message comes out from everywhere. Message comes out from your eyes, it comes out from your glance, it comes out from your fingers, the way you are moving your hand. See, aggression can be shown, kindness can be shown, everything can be shown with little bit of gestures. It comes out from every part of you. So you have to be aware that when you are speaking something, your body is speaking at the same time. And if the two are not speaking in consonance, then there is going to be confusion in the mind of the audience. They are going to feel that, this person says something but behaves differently. Something is wrong in the message that they are giving. So they'll be able to understand this thing. So we have to be very careful about that. Relaxed disposition. You have to be relaxed in yourself in order to make the other person relax. And slow speech. Somehow we assume that if we speak fast, we are more eloquent. I know people, my students who come to our department to study. They like to speak very fast, and they feel that speaking fast makes them look like go-getters or smart or something like that. But that's not true. Speech has to be so slow that the audience of your speech is not only able to hear but also able to understand. Now, for that, he needs a little bit of time, like 10 seconds, to hear, to assimilate all the messages that you are giving in your speech, put them all together, and understand the message, comprehend the message properly. So, if you are speaking too fast, then lot of messages are getting piled up one on top of the other. And this, when the person starts assimilating them, he is going to miss some of them because there are so many messages that have gone. So you have to be relaxed, speak slowly, have a kind face, look into the eye, and then make your speech. So these are the most important things. Lastly, brevity. By brevity, I mean speak less number of words. We need very few words. We need very short sentences. We need very simple words to make our message most understandable. Here I'm going to talk about communication. That means when messages from one end actually reach the other end. I'm not talking about how beautiful the message is. It can be beautiful, it can be very intelligent, it can sound very intelligent, but if it is not understood, it is useless. So keep it short and keep it simple. These are the 8 key elements. I'm sure all of you already know them. Now the thing is, how many of us actually apply them? That's the question. How many of us try to keep our speech simple? How many of us try to speak slowly? Now, we may know it, but now that it has been reiterated here, perhaps consciously you will have in your mind, when you start to speak, you will remember these 8 effective key elements of speech. Okay? Are you being heard? Of course, you are being heard. Uh, when you speak, the other person has to listen because he has ears. He has ears, and your sound will fall on the eardrums, and some sound, will be will go inside that other person's head. He will hear. But being heard, being heard in the sense, being understood. Are you being understood? So there are two things here. One is maybe you are not being heard because you're not loud enough. So you can be loud, you can increase your volume, you can do something about it. But if you're not being heard because you're not speaking properly, that's the problem. Okay? So there can be only three things here. You are not speaking loudly enough, you may not be articulate enough, or you may not be pronouncing your words properly. I'm sure all of you have noticed when you go for meetings and seminars where a lot of people have to speak. Hmm? I'm sure you've noticed that when some people speak, there is a lot of murmuring in the audience. You know, people start talking amongst themselves, they start discussing things. The person is making his speech, and these people are talking amongst themselves. And then the next speaker comes, and everybody is suddenly quiet. Now, what has changed? Why do some people want to be, want to listen to some and not listen to other people? There is something about, there is some magic in the way certain people speak that everybody wants to listen to them. Maybe it's the quality of voice, maybe it is articulation, maybe it is pronunciation. Okay, maybe they have that special skill by which they string their words together in a more comprehensible manner. Maybe they are pronouncing each word in such perfection that everybody wants to listen and learn and understand. Maybe the message is so clear and simple that you want to take all the messages from this person. So we want to be that person. We want to be that person in a gathering that when we open our mouths, everybody should stop talking and look at us and start listening. We want to be there. We want all our students to be there. And that is why it is important to understand articulation and pronunciation. Okay, the two words. Let me first define the two terms. Pronunciation, the act or result of producing the sounds of speech, including articulation, stress, and intonation, often with reference to some standard of correctness or acceptability. How we pronounce our words with reference to the acceptable standard. Acceptable standard, there are many ways to understand this term, this phrase, acceptable standard. One is internationally acceptable. Maybe the way English language is understood all over the world, but then it is different everywhere in the world. But that acceptable standard of English literature, maybe one is that. Maybe one is phonetics, the way English has to be actually pronounced in the perfect manner, the way English was intended to be. I'm saying English. It could be Hindi, it could be Punjabi, it could be Kannada, it could be any language, you know. Every language has a method of being pronounced. Okay, so maybe that standard, or maybe that standard which is dictated by the society within which you live. You see, when we live in a certain section where people are speaking in a certain manner, it is important that our message should not be in some alien kind of standard, but it should be spoken in such a manner that within the society in which we live, it should be understood perfectly. So if we can achieve that, we are articulate. We are going to be articulate. Okay. Next is articulation, the adjustment and movements of speech organs involved in pronouncing a particular sound taken as a whole. The way we use our mouth, our tongue, our glottis, teeth, all the speech organs, the way we use them, put them together to pronounce our words. That would be articulation. So what do we have here? To articulate, pronounce each sound to perfection, and pronunciation, which includes articulation along with intonation, along with other stress and other areas of speech. That is pronunciation. So we have these two things together, articulation and pronunciation. There is a difference between not being heard, that means being inaudible, And not being understood, that means unintelligible. But most of the times we confuse the two. I'll give you an example. You are walking on the road and a Japanese tourist comes from the other side, and this Japanese person does not know English or Hindi very well, so he asks you for directions. 17 sector kaise jayenge? He asks you, and what do you do? Somehow you speak loudly. You assume that just because the other person does not know your language, there is problem with his hearing. So you start speaking loudly, and of course you are gesticulating. You are doing lot of gestures. Yahan se aise, yahan se aise. You're trying to, make the other person understand. And the gap of not knowing the language, you try to fill with volume, which is totally unessential, because you don't really have to speak loudly. He is not deaf. He just does not know the language. So you can speak softly and slowly, and with the help of gestures, perhaps tell him the way, or maybe draw it for him. But you really don't have to speak loudly. Now, this is the confusion. Inaudible and unintelligible. We often confuse the two. We start speaking loudly when we have to be more clear, you know. So let us not do that. First thing, let us clear that. We are looking at the speech communication process here. Look at this. The communication process, of course, begins with the speaker. Speaker is the person who initiates speech. So he starts speaking. The message is what he has to say to the other person. So the speaker begins with conveying the message. That's the second thing that you need. Whatever is communicated is the message. Channel. How is the person conveying that particular message? That would be channel. Channel could be, it could be language, or channel could be some medium, use of some medium, such as maybe a mic or something, or maybe radio, or maybe television, whatever is the channel that is being used. Next, most important person is the listener. Of this, in this whole process, which begins with the speaker, and the intention is to reach the listener. So listener is the receiver of the communicated message, as important as the sender. We should never underestimate the importance of the listener. Then you have feedback, is what the listener has to say to the speaker. And so this he may say in so many ways. He may say it through gestures. He may use the same channel and then respond. He may use words. He may not use words. So it depends really on the listener, how he wants to respond to the speaker. And there is interference. In every message, there is interference. Now, we might think that we are very, very clear, And in fact, when we deliver our lectures in classrooms, we just assume that we are so clear. It was so well delivered that students have to understand at the first go, We forget that there is always interference. Interference could be physical. Interference could be psychological. It could be emotional interference. Now, physical would be that maybe the last benchers are not able to hear me, so I'm inaudible, I become inaudible. That would be one type of interference. Maybe they are disturbed about something. Maybe they are working, they are doing something on their mobile phones and they are not listening, not paying attention. Interference happens. Or maybe that they are unable to relate to what I'm saying. Maybe they don't agree with me, and because they don't agree with me, they are not taking my messages as they should be taking. So there is interference. So there is always interference, So we have to keep scope for interference in our speech. Whenever we are delivering something, we should know that, half of it is going to go away because of interference. And all our lives, we have to keep working on removing the interference from our communication. And that is why I say keep it simple. The simpler the message is, the least the interference. And situation. Where are you located? What is the surrounding? How is the scene in which the communication is taking place has a lot to do with how the message is interpreted and understood. This is the model I'm showing you, the sender-receiver model. Sender who initiates thought and feeling, encodes it into words and transmits it. Receiver decodes the message, assigns thoughts and feelings to the response, encodes a response, and sends a message back. Now look at this. The sender initiates a thought or feeling. Whenever we start saying something, whenever we, in the speech process, whenever we start speaking, the speech comes with all that we have learned all our lives. It's not at the moment something that we are saying. It, together with our speech, we immediately put on display our entire upbringing, our social milieu from where we come, our educational background, our cultural background, our political affiliations in so many cases. Everything is on display the moment we start speaking. Every word that we encode, that's why the term encoding and decoding are being used here, because we encode according to our experiences. Okay? Once the message is transmitted, it goes to the listener. And the listener with similar system of stereotypes working on him, he also has a background, he also has an educational background and political and affiliation and social cultural milieu from where he comes, he also has all those things. So when the message reaches him, he starts decoding according to his background, you see. And that is why there is interference. Sometimes for what I'm saying is, which is of course from my background, what I'm saying may not be understood in the same manner because my receiver may be from another kind of background, another kind of upbringing, another kind of educational level, so whenever a message has to be sent from the speaker, he has to keep in mind the audience, so we have a thing called frame of reference. We have to go into the frame of reference of our audience in order for our message to be understood properly. Okay, and then when he sends forth the response, what is happening? He sends it according to what he understands. We are going to bust some myths over here, some misunderstanding about communication, some things which we take for granted and we assume. I'm going to, one by one, we are going to bust them. We only communicate when we want to communicate. This is one thing we assume all the time. मैंने तो उससे बात ही नहीं की, मैंने तो आपसे कुछ कहा ही नहीं. We say things like this so often. When you say मैंने आपसे कुछ कहा ही नहीं, actually मैंने बहुत कुछ कहा. I have already told you that I don't want to talk to you, that I have no intention of giving you any message. When I'm saying that, I am conveying something. So we communicate all the time. We communicate even when we don't want to communicate. We communicate even when we think we are not communicating. We are communicating all the time. See, communication is basic necessity, basic trait of a human being. It is so basic that it comes even before food and shelter. We can maybe live for a day or two without food. We can live maybe a month or two without shelter. But without communication, you can't live maybe even for an hour or two, I would say. It is so, so difficult. Even when you don't have any other person to communicate, you are communicating with yourself. You are thinking, you are dreaming, you are planning, you are analyzing. This is called intrapersonal communication. So that is going on. So there is intrapersonal, there is interpersonal, there is face to face, there is group, so many types of communication that we keep doing all the time. So it's not that we have to really want to communicate, we just keep communicating like we keep breathing. We think that, we have to be very conscious to think that we are breathing or not breathing. Even when we don't know that we are breathing, we are breathing. Similarly, we are communicating all the time. Words mean the same to both the speaker and the listener. I just spoke about encoding and decoding, so I don't think I need to elaborate on this. Words don't mean the same to the sender and to the listener. There is a dictionary meaning, yes, but there is a connotative meaning to every word. The sense in which words are understood by people is different from their actual dictionary meanings. So words don't really mean the same. We communicate chiefly with words. That's not true. We communicate with every part of our body, and words is very less compared to how much we can communicate with our hands and our facial expressions. So, non-verbal communication is not silent communication. It is very, very loud. It speaks louder than words. It speaks louder than words. And in fact, our audience, when they hear our speech, they are listening to our words, but at the same time, they are looking at the way we are saying them, and they're deciding whether or not to believe us. They will believe us when they like the way we say those words. Okay, so nonverbal is very, very loud. Barriers to effective communication. What are those aspects that actually take away meaning from what is being said? Why are some speakers good speakers and more understood? Why some are not so good and not well understood? Why is it that some messages are easy to understand and take it, some messages are not so easy to follow? So there are some barriers in effective communication. I'm going to look at the barriers one by one. Misinterpretation. When we consciously or at a subconscious level misinterpret what is being said. Now, misinterpretation could be due to our stereotypes, our baggages. It could be due to liking or not liking the other person. There could be so many reasons for a misinterpretation. It could be also difference in knowledge level, difference in IQ level, difference in personalities. There could be so many reasons, but misinterpretation is one of the main causes for messages being lost in the speech communication process. Evaluation of sender. We do it all the time. We may not accept it. We may not actually believe that we do it, but we do it all the time. Our students do it. The moment you enter the classroom, the students look at you and they start deciding whether you are a good teacher or not just by looking at you. ये ऐसे दिखता है, ये वैसे दिखता है, ये ऐसे कपड़े पहनते हैं, ये ऐसे बाल रखते हैं. We are always evaluating the sender on so many aspects of his personality. Looks are one of the first ones. That's the first thing to make an impact also. So the person walks in, the first thing you know about the person is the looks. So you start evaluating there. And then they start speaking. Then you start evaluating the speech. Then you start evaluating the message. ये ठीक बोल रहे हैं, ये गलत बोल रहे हैं. You are listening in some other manner. So you are so busy evaluating the sender that you forget to pay full attention to the message that the sender is trying to convey. So evaluation of sender, projections on part of the sender. When as a sender, I try to pretend to be something which I'm not. I'm putting on a false accent. I am behaving unnaturally. I'm trying to be more intelligent than I am, by using big words and using long sentences. I'm trying to impress you by my knowledge. So when I'm trying to project myself, I'm actually taking away from communication because my audience is immediately going to be put off. They are going to see through the projection, and that is going to be an interference or noise in my communication. Stereotyping. The stereotypes that we have in our heads, oh, such people are like this. For instance, for groups of people we have. Students तो सब ऐसे ही हैं, teachers तो सब ऐसे ही हैं, नेता सब ऐसे ही हैं, पुलिस वाले सब ऐसे ही हैं. We have stereotypes. We have stereotypes. Society has taught us that groups of people are divided into this or this kind of persons. Somehow, without even experiencing, without even knowing them, we fall prey to the stereotypes in our heads. So we just assume they are not going to pay attention. They are always like this, somehow. So we start our communication with the big barrier of stereotypes. So we have to be very alert about that, to take care of stereotypes. Arrogance and superiority. When the speaker assumes that he knows more than the listeners, when he assumes that he is superior, he has that air of superiority about him, the messages are going to get lost. Nobody cares. Nobody cares for your arrogance. And when an arrogant person is making communication, then somehow the people, the audience are, they take a step backwards and they're not interested in listening. So it does not take you anywhere. The air of superiority does not take you anywhere. Defensiveness. Now, in contrast to that air of superiority is defensiveness. When we try to defend everything that we have said, we try to justify everything that we are saying in our speech. When we are defensive about ourselves and about our messages, communication is losing. We are losing the audience. We are losing the communication that we could have established with the audience. Inarticulateness. That's what we are going to talk about today. When we are not able to speak properly, when we have problems with our pronunciation, when our speech organs are not working together, then we are inarticulate. And when that happens, again, we lose our audience immediately. Hidden agenda, something else in the mind and something else on the face. So hidden agendas are not so hidden, let me tell you. The moment you think that I'm going to say this and make them sign here, make them think like this, when we have an agenda, audience knows. They know that there is something else in the mind which is not coming out immediately but will eventually. So he is waiting. He is not paying attention to what you're saying. He is waiting for you to reveal that agenda, which will be revealed in due time. Status makes a difference. If you have to speak to your superior officer, then your communication pattern is different. You have to speak with your peer group, communication pattern is different. So where you are and to whom you are speaking is going to affect your communication. Environment, the situation where you are in, ज़्यादा गर्मी है, ज़्यादा ठंड है, या बहुत claustrophobic है, it's too close, the place is not conducive for speaking, it's not a good setting, it's going to affect you, your environment. Emotions are so strong in communication that they drown away every other communication that you were intending. When you are emotional, then that is the only communication you communicate. That is the only message that you give away, that I am sad. If you are crying, people are going to know that you are sad. If you are laughing, they are going to know that you are having a good time. But what you are saying will be lost. So when we are emotional, we are not articulate. Differences in background, stereotypes, which we discussed already. Poor timing, saying the wrong things at the wrong time. All of us fall prey to this, that we utter things at moments which is totally inappropriate. So we have to be careful about timing also. And personality conflicts. I don't deny, we are all different people. And because we are different people, we have different personalities and different way of thinking, different way of seeing things, different way of understanding situations. And because that is there will be a gap in communication. You like somebody, you don't like somebody. You just can't help it. So that conflict will always be there. These are the barriers to effective communication. If you look at them, once again, they are on the slide here. If you look at them, you realize that you already knew all these gaps. You already knew that these are the barriers, but you never really paid any attention to take care of them when you were trying to communicate. So this is what is expected henceforth, to recognize which barrier is working and to eradicate it. Meta communication is the implied message that we convey along with our speech communication. It could be the way we are speaking, our tone of voice, our stress on words, or the pitch, the volume. It could be that, or it could be our gestures, the non-verbal communication that we give along with our verbal communication. It can be intentional, it can be unintentional. All of us use meta communication in our day-to-day communication process. All of us use that. It's just that we don't know it. If you know a little bit about how to use it, then you can be an effective communicator. We are now going to look into the causes of inarticulateness. I kept on saying again and again, why are some people not very articulate and why some are? So we are going to look at the causes. Why some people are less articulate than others? The causes of unintelligibility. People with poor articulation can sound throaty because their tongue is pulled too far back. Now, this is a totally physical cause. It's a physical cause that the tongue, which is the most important speech organ, if you don't have the tongue, you cannot speak. And that is the importance of tongue. And that's why uh, the word tongue is used to define language. They say mother tongue, the language of the mother. Similarly, zuban is the word for tongue and also the word for language. So that is the importance of tongue, as it is the most important thing in your amongst your speech organs that helps you speak. Now, if you are pulling the tongue too far back, if you are pulling it close to your throat, then you are going to sound throaty. Your words are not going to come out in a very articulate manner. They may sound muffled because they don't move their tongue enough when they speak. The tongue is not moving. Now, if you pull your tongue back into your mouth, then you realize that the tongue cannot be moved properly. Okay? Now, both these problems affect our ability to be understood. I am going to read these few lines with my tongue pulled back. Now, you notice this. People with poor articulation can sound throaty because their tongue is pulled too far back. They may sound muffled because they don't move. You got that? I'm not able to move my tongue, and my tongue is also blocking my voice. So the voice changes, the sound of every word changes, and the movement of tongue is not happening. So pronunciation of each word changes. So the first thing in learning to be articulate is to stick out the tongue, bring it out, and this we can do consciously. If you realize that you are pulling the tongue back, then you have to learn some tongue exercises to bring the tongue out. It has to come out. Okay, that is why I've made that figure with the tongue sticking out. Then sounds such as s, th, r, these, when they are put together with other words, uh, they may not come out properly. So if you have r with th, then you don't know how to pronounce that r. So these things are there, and this happens because of the tongue. The tongue has to be positioned towards the front of your mouth and use the tongue to pronounce each of these syllables carefully and properly. I'm going to look at that in due time. Okay, it's a physical and muscular activity. See, articulation, we have everything. We have our background, everything working for us. But the moment we start pronouncing words, it is a physical activity. We are making use of our speech organs, So it is a physical and muscular activity. The tongue is a muscle. The tongue is a muscle. Just as we have to exercise our other muscles in order to be good at any other activity. If you want to be a runner, you start exercising your muscles, your leg muscles. You want to be a lifter, you start exercising your shoulders and your biceps and your triceps. You want to be a speaker, exercise your tongue, because that's the most important muscle, right? So it's a physical and muscular activity. The ability to move fluidly and adroitly from one position to another is extremely important for clarity and accuracy. You see, when we start learning a new language, notice this now. You go to another state and you are asked to learn some new language. Let's say you go to Tamil Nadu and then they tell you now you have to learn Tamil. If you have to do that, what do you say? Zuban palatti nahi hai. You use that word because zaban palatti nahi. There are some letters which we have never pronounced, so we don't know how to pronounce them. For instance, la, la. We don't have la in Hindi, so we don't know how to pronounce la. But there is a lot of la in Marathi, Kannada, Tamil, in all these languages. So the pronunciation of la is a challenge for us. We don't know whether it is da or whether it is la. We don't know that. So the tongue is not used to it. Okay. So to move fluidly and adroitly from one position to another, this leads to clarity and accuracy of speech. Persons will vary their articulatory positions under different emotional states and social situations. We are, more articulate in different, of course, this you have understood previously, emotional state and social situation. If the social situation is conducive to us, if we are happy emotionally, we are we are capable of being more articulate. Okay, first thing, we start asking ourselves these three questions. Three questions to each one of us. We have to be honest. First of all, we have to be honest with ourselves. Do we want to improve? Do we really think that our speech needs improving? That's the first question you ask yourself. Is my articulation up to the standard of my own expectation? Is this the way I want to speak all my life? Or is there any other way? Ask this question. Second question, are there any sounds or sound combinations that need improvement? If you've got a yes answer to the first question, that yes, I need to improve my speech. If you've got a yes there, then you ask yourself, which is the letter? Which is the sound in which I need improvement? क्या मैं श को स बोलता हूँ? अगर बोलता हूँ तो how do I change it? So for that you have to be honest with yourself and ask, are there any sounds or groups of sounds that I need to improve? Three conditions must be fulfilled to articulate clearly. The sound must be accurately formed. The sound must be sufficiently supported by breath. The sound must be completely finished. You see, first you form the sound and then you support it by breath. कुछ अक्षर ऐसे होते हैं, कुछ स्वर ऐसे होते हैं जिनमें ज्यादा सांस की जरूरत है, कुछ में कम की जरूरत है. अब आपको ये खुद अंदाजा लगाना होगा कि यहाँ पे कितनी सांस देनी है. हमारी सांस हमारे शब्दों को आगे लेके जाती है. It takes them forward. If you don't provide breath to your speech, then you cannot speak. Okay? तो जब हम बोलते हैं, हम एक्सेल करते हैं, इनहेल नहीं करते हैं. इनहेल करने के साथ बोल नहीं सकते हैं. हमेशा एक्सेल करते हैं. And between words we inhale. How much to inhale and how much to exhale in different sounds. Now this is a science, This, if you know this properly, then you can give enough stress to different sounds and they'll come out proper. So how do you start being more articulate? You watch yourself in the mirror. First of all, watch yourself. See what you are doing. Have you ever watched yourself speaking? In fact, have you ever heard yourself? See, when we speak, we listen to ourselves from inside, from within. But if you listen to your recorded voice, you will know how other people are listening to you. We are speaking not for our own pleasure, we are speaking for other people. And so other people have to hear a good sound. For that, hear yourself speak. Watch yourself in the mirror. Practice for short periods several times a day. Practice your speech several times a day. Relax, that's one of the fundamental things. Relax. Breathe deeply. I just told you about importance of breath. With each breath we have to, with each exhaling, we bring out sounds and words. So we have to learn how to breathe. Breathe deeply. Concentrate on vocal efficiency. Read aloud slowly. When we were children, we were asked to read aloud in our classrooms. Our teachers used to tell us that textbook उठाओ, यहाँ से यहाँ तक read aloud. Nowadays, we are not reading aloud. If you don't read aloud, you don't know how to pronounce. And when we are reading in our mind, we, skip the pronunciation part. We don't care so much for it. But when we are reading aloud, we have to speak each word carefully. And so we learn how to pronounce them. So read aloud slowly. Repeat difficult words and phrases several times. You have to do it. Every time you learn a new word, you have to repeat, use it in as many sentences as possible. Repeat it on every occasion that you get. Repeat it many times, as many times as possible. Check with a good listener. If somebody is ready to listen to your reading, that's very good. And let practice become a habit. Practice so much that it becomes a habit. And if you've ever heard good speakers, if there are people who come and speak and you admire them and you think, kitna acha bolte hain. If you felt like that for anybody, then trust me, they have practiced very well, to come to that position. Without practice, nobody can speak well. So if you've heard somebody, admired them for their articulateness, admired them for their eloquence, then also remember that they have put in a lot of practice to be able to speak like that. So let practice become habit. A good way to improve one's delivery of normal phrases is to practice on difficult ones. These are called tongue twisters. Here are a few tongue twisters that exercise your vowel and consonant articulation. If you try to read out the tongue twisters, you probably will be able to know that stringing words together, difficult words together, and speaking them fast in an articulate manner is quite a difficult proposition. And as children, we used to do that. We were not afraid, we were not shy. We used to have our tongue twisters. We had them in English, we had them in Hindi and any other language. All languages have tongue twisters. The main reason for this is that right from childhood, a little boy or girl who is using tongue twisters is able to articulate each sound in that tongue twister. So maybe you should try doing this. The tongue twisters. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the butter was so bitter, so she bought some better butter to make the bitter butter better. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the butter was so bitter, so she bought some better butter to make the bitter butter better. Okay. Similarly, 11 benevolent elephants. Now these sound very simple, but when you start speaking them fast, they are a little difficult. And you must be having in your own language also tongue twisters. How to deal with tongue twisters? Start slowly and carefully. She sells seashells on the seashore, but the shells she sells are seashells for sure. She sells seashells on the seashore, but the shells she sells are seashells for sure. She sells seashells on the seashore, but the shells she sells are seashells for sure. She sells seashells on the seashore, but the shells she sells are seashells for sure. She sells seashells on the seashore, but the shells she sells are seashells for sure. Sh or sa, ek saath aana, is very difficult. And with practice, it is possible. If you can differentiate between sh and sa together, and so fast, then other tongue twisters become very easy. This is one of the very difficult tongue twisters. So make sure the start and end of each word is crisp. Repeat the phrase, getting faster and faster while maintaining clarity. If you trip over words, stop and start again. So at the end of the session, we will do some tongue twister exercises. We'll take out this slide and all of us will try to practice with some tongue twisters. These are the Hindi swar, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. And this is the way we have been educated in Hindi. Hindi, which is phonetically a very strong language, where each word is pronounced the way it is written. Each letter is pronounced the way it is written. हर मात्रा की एक अपनी जगह है और वो उसी तरह से उसका उच्चारण किया जाता है कि अगर छोटी ई की मात्रा लगी है तो वो किसी और तरह से उच्चारण उसका हो ही नहीं सकता, एक ही तरह से हो सकता है. तो ये हमें पहले सिखाया जाता था. हम हर अक्षर में स्वर लगा के प्रैक्टिस करते थे, जो आजकल हो नहीं रहा है. उस वजह से प्रॉब्लम्स इन आर्टिकुलेशन आर अराइजिंग. लुक एट दिस, जो हमारे व्यंजन है, और हम ये देखेंगे कि ये व्यंजन हमारे स्पीच ऑर्गन्स में कहाँ से निकल रहे हैं और कौन सा स्पीच ऑर्गन हम इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं इनका उच्चारण करने के लिए। क, ख, ग, घ, ये सब गले से निकलने वाले व्यंजन हैं। देखिए, क, ख, ग, घ, सब यहां से निकल रहे हैं और हमारी जुबान का क्या कर रही है, आप नोटिस कीजिए, पीछे की तरफ है। क, ख, ग, घ। अगले लाइन में, अगली पंक्ति में जुबान थोड़ी आगे की ओर आती है। च, छ, ज, झ। एक ही स्थान पर थोड़ा सा इधर उधर करके हम इनका उच्चारण कर रहे हैं। च, छ, ज, झ, जबान और तालु का इस्तेमाल करते हुए। फिर से जबान थोड़ी सी और आगे आई। ट, ठ, ड, ढ, ट, ठ, ड, ढ। हमने अपनी जबान से तालु को एक हल्का सा मारते हैं। ट, ठ, ड, ढ। अब जबान और भी आगे आई। त, थ, द, ध। जुबान से दांत को मारते हैं। त, थ, द, ध। अब होंठ। प, फ, ब, भ। प, फ, ब, भ। हिंदी इतनी फोनेटिकली स्ट्रांग है कि हिंदी के व्यंजन की हर पंक्ति आपके अलग अलग स्पीच ऑर्गन से निकल रही है। So if we recognize that, if we recognize the speech organ that is used for pronunciation of a particular letter, we are able to pronounce it properly. For accurate sound production, learn the characteristics of the sound. जब आपके सामने कोई स्वर आता है, कोई भी साउंड आता है, जैसे ल, ल नया साउंड है, अगर आपके सामने ल आया, आपको ल बोलना है, तो पहले आप उसको देखिए कि वो किन दो शब्दों का कॉम्बिनेशन लग रहा है आपको, उसके सबसे नजदीक कौन सा है जो आप आराम से बोल सकते हैं और उसमें क्या जोड़ने से शायद आप उसका उच्चारण कर सकें। फर्स्ट लर्न द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक ऑफ द साउंड, then try to identify which articulators are used to produce the sound. Lips, teeth, tongue, gum ridge, hard palate, soft palate, glottis, किस चीज का इस्तेमाल हो रहा है वो नोटिस कीजिए। कई बार मैंने देखा है लोग गजल गाते हैं, उन्हें ये अंदाजा नहीं है कि ग में ग्लॉटिस का इस्तेमाल करते हुए उर्दू में हमें ग कहना है। गजल, गजल और गजल में अंतर है। तो recognize the use of glottis also, you know, glottis, soft palate, hard palate, ये हमारे सारे speech organs हैं। Then what is the manner of airflow? Is the airflow stopped and then released as in p, t? थोड़ा सा एयर फ्लो देना है, थोड़ा सा सांस देना है हमारे अक्षर को, या कंटिन्यूअस है जैसे स, ह में बहुत सांस दी जाती है, तो ह में सबसे ज्यादा एक्चुअली यूज ऑफ एच। ह सांस से ही निकल रहा है, सभी सांस से निकलते हैं लेकिन किसी में बहुत ज्यादा, किसी में कम। तो ये आइडेंटिफाई करें कि ज्यादा सांस देनी है या कम देनी है, रोकनी है, फिर देनी है, रोकनी है। इस तरह से आइडेंटिफाई अगर हम कर लेंगे तो हम अपने शब्दों का ज्यादा अच्छे से उच्चारण कर पाएंगे। Sufficient breath support. To produce normal speech, air must be exhaled. I already said that. To convert airflow into sounds, the breath stream must be strong. Very strong breath stream has to come out, because then on the way there is friction, on the way there is redirection, there is stoppage. So वो सबको पार करते हुए हमारी सांस निकलनी चाहिए। Strength and accuracy in the use of respiratory system are part of the skills that lead to clear articulation. जैसे जब आप स्विमिंग करते हैं, अब स्विमिंग तैरना जो है वो हाथ और पैरों का कमाल है, लेकिन सबसे ज्यादा सांस का कमाल है। अगर आप तैरते समय सांस का यूज नहीं कर पाते हैं ठीक से, तो आप तैर नहीं सकते हैं। जैसे आप दौड़ते हैं, जब आप दौड़ते हैं तब भी सांस का उपयोग अगर आप नहीं कर पाते हैं ठीक से, तो आप दौड़ नहीं सकते हैं। उसी तरह से जब आप बोलते हैं तो सांस का इस्तेमाल बहुत जरूरी हो जाता है। रेस्पिरेटरी सिस्टम हैज टू बी वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग, अ स्पीकर्स रेस्पिरेटरी सिस्टम। Completeness. One of the most noticeable articulation problems is incompleteness, failing to produce all the sounds in a word. कुछ शब्द, कुछ अक्षर बीच में से खो जाते हैं बोलते समय, कुछ का उच्चारण ही नहीं होता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, साउंड सच एज T, D, K, G when produced in words require an audible explosion of air. जैसे bat, bed, cook, log. तो हम bat, bed, cook, log करके बोल देते हैं, जिसमें हम लास्ट में जो ऑडिबल एक्सप्लोजन ऑफ एयर, बेड, बैट, आ रही आवाज, ये आवाज जब नहीं आती है तो बन जाता है बैट. बैट बोला तो उसमें ट का उच्चारण किया ही नहीं. तो इस तरह से हम कई शब्दों में अक्षरों का उच्चारण ही नहीं करते, तो वो इनकम्प्लीट साउंड हो जाता है. I'm going to give you some breathing exercises because I told you breathing is very important. So we'll begin with this. Inhale slowly and deeply through the nose. Exhale slowly through the mouth and repeat. It's a very simple exercise. श्वास को नाक से अंदर लेना धीरे धीरे और मुंह से छोड़ना. Slowly. Inhale slowly and deeply through the nose. Exhale slowly, making the sound यूज योर डायफ्राम. यहां से आवाज निकलनी चाहिए. आ बोल रहे हैं आप, अंदर ले रहे हैं, और जब छोड़ रहे हैं आप आ बोल रहे हैं जोर से डायफ्राम का इस्तेमाल करते हुए. इनहेल डीपली, एक्सेल इन शॉर्ट एक्सप्लोसिव बर्स्ट like this, take out in bursts of sound. Inhale slowly, count aloud, clearly, enunciating each number until you run out of breath. सांस अंदर लेते लेते आप गिनती करना शुरू करें जब तक आपकी सांस रुक नहीं जाती है. आप गिनती कर रहे हैं जब तक आपके पास श्वास नहीं है, उसके बाद आप छोड़ दें. This is a very good warm-up exercise for any speaker, and for all the articulators. सब articulators alert हो जाते हैं जब आप ये exercise करते हैं. There is a sentence I am giving here. You have to read the sentence as many times as you can in one breath. This sentence is full of words that use air. ये देखिए. He hid at home and sobbed when his sister seized whatever he had on top in the thin 5-shelved closet. अब आप बिना सांस छोड़े एक सांस में ये सेंटेंस जितनी बार बोल सकते हैं आप इसको बोलिए. इसमें बहुत सारे एच हैं जिससे आपकी सांस एक्सेल करनी है. ही, हिड, होम. बहुत सारे एस हैं. सिस्टर, सॉब्ड, सिस्टर, सीज्ड, इसमें भी बहुत एक्सेलिंग है. स में बहुत सांस है. तो ये देखिए आप किस तरह से आप ये सेंटेंस बोल पाएंगे. अगर आप नहीं बोल पा रहे हैं then you need to do breath exercises. You need to do that. Maybe we can do this also at the end of the session. Maybe. I think you should write this down, and before we break for tea, ये हम बोल के देखेंगे. He hid at home and sobbed when his sister seized whatever he had on top in the thin 5-shelved closet. Test yourself, take a deep breath and see how far you can read through this grouping of words. 2 word groupings दे रही हूं मैं. ये देखना है कि हम ये grouping कितना दूर तक हम ले जा सकते हैं एक सांस में. Make sure you are making each of the words come alive as you say them. Don't just race through them, interpret them. ये हैं वो शब्द. Collecting and projecting, receding and speeding, and shocking and rocking and darting and parting and treading and spreading and whizzing and hissing and dripping and skipping and hitting and splitting and shining and twinning. This is one set. Then there is another set. And rattling and battling and shaking and quaking and pouring and roaring and waving and raving and flowing and going and heaving and cleaving and foaming and roaming and moaning and groaning and dropping and hopping. Can you say this without losing your breath? कि बीच में ऐसे हो जाए, ऐसे नहीं होना चाहिए. उसके लिए you have to do your breath exercises. So once again we'll do this at the end of the session. There are these few terms I want to introduce you to. Immovable jaw, idle tongue, lazy lips and too much speed. Immovable jaw, जब हम अपने जबड़े को पूरी तरह हिलाते नहीं हैं. When we are speaking, we are not ready to move it. आइडल टंग, जब हमारी जुबान हिलती नहीं है. लेजी लिप्स, जब हमारे लिप्स नहीं काम करते हैं. या too much speed when we are speaking too fast. Okay, now look at this. Spread the lips in a smile for E and open them for ah. These are exercises for all these problems: immovable jaw, idle tongue, lazy lips, and too much speed. These are exercises for that. So we all speakers, you know, teachers, as teachers we never really pay attention to being speakers. सिंगर्स अपनी आवाज पे इतना ध्यान देते हैं, इतनी एक्सरसाइजेस, वोकल एक्सरसाइजेस करते हैं, अपने गले का इतना ख्याल रखते हैं. दे डोंट स्पीक अननेसेसरीली बिकॉज दे आर सिंगर्स. उनको गाना गा के पैसा कमाना है. इट इज देयर लाइफ ब्लड एंड दैट्स व्हाई दे टेक केयर ऑफ देयर वॉइस सो मच. पॉलिटिशियंस या पब्लिक स्पीकर्स, वो अपनी आवाज का ध्यान रखते हैं. एंकर्स, रेडियो जॉकीज, वीडियो जॉकीज, ये सब लोग अपनी आवाज का बहुत ध्यान रखते हैं. और हम टीचर्स, वी नेवर रियली थिंक दैट वी आर वॉइस आर्टिस्ट. हमें भी अपनी आवाज से ही अपना जीवन कमाना है. एज टीचर्स अगर कभी हम गूंगे हो जाएं या बोल ना पाए तो हमको कौन लेक्चरर रखेगा या कौन टीचर रखेगा, यू नो. एंड our voice is our most important tool in teaching, in speaking. We are speakers, we are voice artists. तो जहां वो सब इतना ध्यान रखते हैं कलाकार लोग अपनी आवाजों का, हम लोग बिल्कुल ध्यान नहीं रखते. एंड यू विल रियलाइज, एंड इफ यू गो बैक एंड थिंक ऑफ योर टीचर्स, यू फाइंड दैट बहुत सारे टीचर्स को स्पीकर्स थ्रोट हो जाता है, बोलते बोलते गला भरभराने लगता है, खांसी आने लगती है. ये सारी प्रॉब्लम्स होने लगती हैं बिकॉज वी स्पीक एट अ स्ट्रेच. 2-2 घंटे, 3-3 घंटे दिन में हम लगातार बोलते हैं और हम इतना बोलते हैं तो हमारी आवाज को स्ट्रेन होता है. And that is why it is important that we learn these exercises and we start respecting ourselves as voice artists. We start respecting our voices, you know. So that is why I'm giving you these exercises. Spread the lips in a smile for E, open them for A, and then close them for O sound. हम तीनों जो basic sounds हैं वो निकाल रहे हैं. Rapidly say fat dat 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 several times, then say ira 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 ira. इरा 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 इरा, क्लैरिटी आती है अपनी स्पीच में. मेक बिलीव दैट यू आर अ ट्रक एंड ट्रिल योर टंग. यू डू दैट विद योर टंग. इससे जुबान की एक्सरसाइज होती है. Say each of the following words 5 times, trying to keep the tongue forward, just behind the upper front teeth. Listen for brightness and liveliness of tone. Tea, deal, tick, dish, tail, thick, nape, table. जुबान आगे रख के बोलिए, ये आगे रखने वाले words हैं. Then there is this problem of stiff upper lip. When your lip is not being used properly, say these words: pit pat, pit pat, pit pat, pit pat, many times. Say it many times and say it fast. You know, try to pronounce all the P's and the T's clearly. Try to pick up speed. Don't lose the P and T. पिट पैट पिट पैट पिट पैट पिट पैट पिट पैट पिट, जितना तेज आप बोल सकते हैं इसको बोलिए. जॉ ओपनिंग, जब आपका जॉ नहीं पूरी तरह से खुलता है, देन हैक, यैच, डॉट, पॉड, यार्ड, डार्ट, टैब, टॉट, डार्क, डा, ये सारे वो शब्द हैं जिसमें हमारा मुंह बहुत ज्यादा खोलना है. यैच, डार्ट पूरा खोलना है, तो ये खोल के प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हैं. सो दीज आर द एक्सरसाइजेस फॉर योर स्पीच ऑर्गन्स. I have a little poem here. Mrs. Tongue does her housework. देखिए, since we know that the tongue is the most important of all the speech organs, we have to know how to use the tongue effectively. Okay? Now listen to this. Mrs. Tongue lives in her house, the mouth. Every morning she mops it from ceiling to floor. First, she sweeps her mop from right to left. Now this is the exercise for your tongue. Run your tongue in full circle around your cheek walls, across the front of your top and bottom teeth. Repeat 3 times. Like this. One side and then the other side. Run your tongue on your teeth, upper teeth and lower teeth, and do it 3 times. You will notice the difference. In your mouth, you will notice your difference. You know, you will see how it changes. Next, she sweeps her mop from left to right, reverse the direction of the circle, repeat 3 times. Then the other way around, repeat 3 times and notice the difference. Now she dusts the furniture. Sweep your tongue as rapidly as you can from side to side across upper teeth. Repeat them 10 times. Notice the difference to yourself. Then she shakes out the rug out of the window. Stick the tongue out, extend as far as you can. Move it rapidly up and down. Repeat 10 times. Stick it out and up and down, up and down. You see the difference, and your tongue, you will feel that you are able to speak better. Lastly, she sweeps away the cobwebs from around the front door. Stick the tongue out as far as you can. Sweep outside of your lips. Repeat 3 times, reverse direction 3 times. This is the exercise for the tongue. So we've seen articulation problems so far, and in the next session we'll be doing pronunciation.
Friends, I welcome you once again to the second part of the session on articulation and pronunciation. In the first part, we have seen various aspects related to articulation. Now our focus will be more on pronunciation, and in this session also there will be some exercises, and Dr. Archana R. Singh will continue the session on articulation and pronunciation, now on the part of the pronunciation.
Welcome back. Are we ready?
Yes.
I'm going to look at some of the pronunciation problems that all of us have, okay? And in the last session, some people asked me questions about pronunciation also, and also what difference does background make, when it comes to being articulate or to be able to pronounce words properly. Does your background, whether it is rural, urban, whether it is a public school education or not, or a government school or what, does it make a difference in all these things? We are going to look at that. So the main problems of pronunciation are not where you come from, but how you view yourself. Okay, that's where the problem begins. The first thing is spelling. If you are spelling correctly, you are speaking correctly, especially in all the Indian languages. आप हिंदी जैसे आप लिखते हैं वैसे ही आप उसको पढ़ते हैं और वैसे ही आप उसका उच्चारण करते हैं. सेम फॉर पंजाबी, सेम फॉर ऑल द इंडियन लैंग्वेजेस. हम जिस तरह से लिखते हैं हम वैसे ही प्रोनाउंस करते हैं. The problem which a gentleman in the last session, he asked the question, rural background trying to speak English. I think that is how we understood the question, that people from rural background, when they come to cities, they have a problem of speaking in English. So that is where you start speaking a foreign language. Okay, and problem with English arises because unlike Hindi, we don't speak the way we write. In English, there are so many words, letters that will be silent. Then sometimes some are pronounced, some are not pronounced. Sometimes stress changes. For instance, the word economics. Economics is pronounced as economics, but when you say economy, then you stress on C, economy. And economics, you don't say economics, you don't say that. So it changes. So economy is economy and economics is economics. You see, so this kind of confusion arises in the mind of people from who take English as a foreign language. English is a foreign language for us. And so spelling is one of the first things that creates a problem, how the word is spelled. The influence of mother tongue. See, the mother always remains with you. Whether you stay in the same city, or whether you go to the larger city, whether you go to a metropolitan city, whether you go to a foreign country, wherever you go, your mother goes with you in your mind, it goes with you in your heart. And same for mother tongue. Mother tongue stays with you. Okay, you may polish your English to a large extent, start speaking like other people, Okay, you may cultivate that accent maybe from, wherever you are living. You may get it, you may acquire it, but it is always acquired. You see, mother tongue is that which you have grown up with, which will have an influence on your pronunciation all the time. Yeah? You can easily make out from the way a person speaks which state of the country he or she belongs to. You can easily make that out, with a little bit of attention to how the words are being pronounced. So let us not be embarrassed of the mother tongue interference. Let us not be embarrassed. I am here, in favor of communication. Just because you want your English language to be perfect, if you are giving communication a back seat, then the whole purpose of this session is lost. The idea is not just to speak good English. I'm not here to tell you to speak perfect English. I am here to help you speak speak out your words better, your words in whichever language you're speaking, so that they are understood. बात समझा पाने और समझने की हो रही है, और अगर उसमें मातृभाषा का असर थोड़ा बहुत दिखाई देता है, let us not mind it, let us not become conscious of it, and most of all, let us never be embarrassed of it. It will always be there. Weak and strong sounds, जैसे मैंने अभी एग्जाम्पल बताया, इकोनॉमी, इकोनॉमिक्स, फोटोग्राफ, फोटोग्राफी. अब ये इसमें किस अक्षर पे स्ट्रेस आएगा, कौन सा वीक रहेगा, कौन सा स्ट्रॉन्ग रहेगा, ये हमें पहले सीखना होगा कि उस भाषा में किस तरह बोला जाता है. So there is nothing really wrong here. You just have to learn how it is being used in the other language. That's all. It's not something very difficult. Weak and strong sound. Similarly for stress. किस अक्षर पे स्ट्रेस देना ज्यादा, किस पे कम देना. And intonation. How do we use the sentence that we have formed? How do we read out the entire sentence? Betty bought a bit of butter, but the butter was so bitter. So she bought, some of them were reading it like that, so bitter. So this is an influence of the way we read. So we have somehow given so a lot of importance when we are reading. Another person would say, Betty bought a bit of butter, but the butter was so bitter. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the butter was so bitter. So can be very less, so can be very much, depending on how much stress you are laying on a particular word. Okay, so pronunciation problems arise from wrong usage of the above, spelling, mother tongue interference, weak and strong sounds, stress and intonation. Okay, then there are problems of words which we are not familiar. अगर हम किसी वर्ड को पहचानते नहीं हैं, किसी शब्द को पहचानते नहीं हैं, तो सबसे अच्छी बात ये रहेगी कि हम उसका इस्तेमाल पहले प्राइवेटली करें. पब्लिक में, स्पीच में पहली बार अननोन वर्ड बोलने से पहले हम उसे अलग से बोल के, प्रोनाउंस करके, कई बार प्रोनाउंस करके, रिहर्स करके प्रैक्टिस कर लें. दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. एंड देन वी टेक इट टू द पब्लिक फोरम. Okay, so unfamiliar words are difficult to pronounce. That is easy to understand. Another reason for errors in pronunciation might be that other people with whom you spend a great deal of time also mispronounce the words. ये तो वही बात हो गई. अगर आपके आसपास के सब लोग किसी शब्द को गलत बोलते हैं, तो आप भी उसी तरह से प्रोनाउंस करने लगेंगे. आपके माहौल में अगर श, स बोला जाता है, श का उच्चारण स होता है, तो आप भी वैसे ही उच्चारण करेंगे. इट इज मोस्ट नेचुरल. ओके, जैसे हमारी भोजपुरी भाषा है, भोजपुरी भाषा में श है ही नहीं. जिस तरह हमारी हिंदी में ळ नहीं है, उसी तरह भोजपुरी में श नहीं है. तो वहां पे शादी होती है, शाम को होती है, एंड इट इज मोस्ट नेचुरल. एवरीबडी स्पीक्स लाइक दैट. फिर जब भोजपुरी बोलने वाले हिंदी बोलते हैं, तो उन्हें श के उच्चारण में दिक्कत होती है. और फिर जब वो इंग्लिश बोलेंगे, तो एस एच और एस दोनों के कॉम्बिनेशंस में उन्हें दिक्कत आएगी ही आएगी. So this is always there, right? उसको overcome करने के लिए we have to first recognize it. You have to recognize it. जैसे हमारे गांव में एक व्यक्ति था, उसका नाम था आशु. अब वो अपने नाम को आंसू बुलाता था, हमेशा आंसू बुलाता था. उससे पूछने पर कि आपका नाम क्या है, वो आंसू बोलता था और लिखता था ASHU. उसको कभी ये नहीं लगता था कि मैं अपना उच्चारण गलत कर रहा हूं. उसको ये विचार भी उसके दिमाग में नहीं आता था. The first thing a person who needs to make their living through speaking, people like us, teachers, we have to first identify क्या मैं गलत बोल रहा हूं. That's the first thing, because mother tongue influence will be there, regional influence will be there, background influence will be there on our speech. So first recognize, identify, diagnose the problem, and then go about correcting it. Some words are commonly mispronounced. ये तो रीजन की बात हो गई. कुछ रीजन से बाहर भी मिसप्रोनाउंस्ड होते हैं वर्ड्स. फॉर इंस्टेंस, एक्सेप्ट, ACCEPT, एक्सेप्ट. और एक्सेप्ट में हम कोई अंतर ही नहीं रखते. एक्सेप्ट यू, आई एक्सेप्ट, दोनों में हम कोई अंतर नहीं रखते हैं प्रोनाउंस करने में. आर्कटिक, सब आमतौर पे सब आर्टिक सर्कल बोलेंगे आर्कटिक को. और सबसे ज्यादा मिसप्रोनाउंस एटसेट्रा. ETC जो हम इसके वाक्य के बाद में लिखते हैं, ETC, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा, कुछ भी प्रोनाउंस करते हैं, उसका असली प्रोनाउंसिएशन है एटसेट्रा, जो कि कोई भी ठीक प्रोनाउंस नहीं करता. तो ऐसे समाज में जहां सभी एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा बोल रहे हैं, हमको लगता है एक्स्ट्रा एक्स्ट्रा ठीक है, but it is actually etc. So mispronunciations के main reason, the way you are spelling, the way it is pronounced in your mother tongue, which you are not able to overcome, then the way it is pronounced in your region, in your immediate society, and the way it is pronounced everywhere. All of them could lead to problems related to mispronunciation. How do we remove these problems? Okay. Practice makes perfect. No denying that. You have to hear yourself speak. You have to record your voice and then listen to it. आप record कीजिए और आप सुनिए. You will notice everything. You will notice the mother tongue influence. You will notice intonation की गलतियां कहाँ कहाँ हो रही हैं. You will notice stress कहाँ हम गलत दे रहे हैं. You will notice all that. If you have not yet recorded and heard yourself, then you have not yet started paying attention to your speech. So do that and practice. Okay. Habits that you're trying to change, they have been with you for a long time, so don't get disheartened. It will take time, but it can happen. It can change. Okay. It can't happen overnight, but it will change. So you have to practice and you have to have the desire. The first thing that you need to develop as part of a good speaker, as part of being a good speaker, is to be a good listener. I've been told that you already had a session on listening, but I would still repeat a little bit about listening. But even before I talk about listening, I'm going to talk about silence. You see, silence is a part of speech too. Silence is a very, very important part of speech. And in order to understand the importance of silence, there is this activity. Keep silent for 1 minute. Were you silent? Were you silent? Maybe you were not speaking. but you were thinking. Maybe you were not speaking to another person, but you were speaking to yourself. And after a while, I used to do this exercise for 3 minutes. 3 minutes was so difficult for an audience. 3 minutes was so difficult to control. And people would, start getting fidgety. How can you be silent for 3 minutes? Because silence makes you very uncomfortable. Silence makes you uncomfortable. So there is certain discomfort. There is some mystery in silence. And till the time you are uncomfortable in silence, you cannot be a good speaker. Now, this is very strange. Why should keeping silent make you be a better speaker? Because only when you are silent, you hear. When you are speaking, you cannot hear, you cannot listen as attentively as you should. When you are silent, you hear. And there is a sound in silence. And that sound has a lot of depth. Because that sound of silence helps you put your thoughts together. Okay? Helps you understand what the speaker is saying. Helps you know yourself better. So, silence is the most important tool of a speaker. You have to learn how to speak and you have to learn when to be silent. Okay? Silence speaks, yet we talk all the time. Importance of speech is noted when we experience silence. Silence can be very confusing to us, sometimes even intimidating. Talking, however, seems easier, but talking is different from speaking. How is talking different from speaking? It's very easy to talk. Talk to a friend. You can spend 10 hours talking to a friend. No, 1 hour over the phone, you can talk. 3 hours sitting in front of the friend, you can talk. But if you have to make a speech for 5 minutes, you have to prepare. You spend all night writing down the speech, rehearsing it, and then coming and making it. So that is the difference between talking and speaking. You can talk, as much as you want. But we are not talkers. Why are we here? Not because we are talkers. We are here because we are speakers. We have to take the dais. We have to stand before an audience and we have to speak, not talk. If we have to speak, we have to understand the silence. Silence that comes from our audience to us. Silence that we use in our speech in the form of pauses. When you are speaking, then you need to pause. Between words, you pause. Between sentences, you pause. Between paragraphs, you pause. How much pause? How long should a pause be? How often should a pause be? How can the pause be used effectively to get the audience to come to you, to understand your message? How can that pause be used? That is what using pauses in a speech is a form of using silence in your conversation. So when we write, we know very well, okay, we'll put a comma, we'll put a semicolon, we'll put a full stop, we'll change the paragraph, we'll change the chapter. What we are doing actually is we are putting pauses. Pause here, pause after this letter, pause after this word, comma. But when we are speaking, there has to be a comma, there has to be a full stop. So a short pause, a longer pause, a bigger pause. Different types of pauses are required. So a speaker uses pauses to put his thoughts together and then encode his message. The listener uses pauses to assimilate the thoughts and then decode the message. So pauses are used on both the sides. The pauses are used by the speaker, pauses are used by the listener. A good speaker has to learn to use silence as well. Listening is a skill also. Only good listeners make good speakers, because only through listening we learn our language. And we learn how to pronounce words. We learn how to articulate. It happens only through listening. And only through listening we have learned it, and that is why if we have listened well, we are able to pronounce better, we are able to articulate better, and we turn into better speakers. So this whole thing, it's all interrelated: speech, silence, and listening. Okay, I have outlined 4 types of listening over here. I'm sure all of you understand these different types of listenings because all of you practice them at different times. Okay, appreciative listening, like you would listen to maybe music or something. You listen to the music, you're not really thinking कि इसकी ये राग कैसा है, इसका ताल कैसा है, और यहाँ पे ये गलती हो गया. You're not thinking of that. You are enjoying whatever the music is being played. That is appreciative listening. Empathetic listening, when you are with the other person in their emotional state, you are trying to listen to whatever your friend is saying or somebody is saying, and we're trying to be in their position, and there is an empathy in that. That is empathetic listening. Comprehensive listening, when you are just trying to understand. For instance, right now you may be doing comprehensive listening. You're not doing appreciative listening, you're not doing empathetic listening. Now when I am speaking, you are doing comprehensive listening. You may also be doing critical listening. Critical listening is to evaluate a message. Whatever the message is being given, with your background knowledge about it, you try to evaluate it. This we do mostly when we listen to our peer group, peer presentations. We are always doing critical listening. So these are different types of listening. We do them, and our students also do it in the classes. So we have to be alert what type of listening is happening at the other end. Some students may be doing comprehensive listening, and others may be also doing critical listening, that is evaluating the speaker and evaluating the speech. Critical listening. There are different types of listeners also. Uh, First is fraudulent listeners, those who are not really listening. They're also called nodders. All of us have fraudulent listeners in classes. People who are not really listening, but they are just nodding their heads, pretending to be listening. These are fraudulent. Monopolistic listeners, they always want to be listened to, but they don't want to listen themselves. They want to speak all the time, monopolize a conversation by speaking so much that everybody should be listening to them, and they don't want to listen to other people. And such people are not great favorites, when it comes to conversations and companionship, because you note this point that they only want to speak, they monopolize. That's not a good idea. Then completers are those who are in great discomfort when it comes to pauses. So if you are pausing between words, then completers will try to fill in the pause by giving you hints about different things that you could say. All of us have met completers. All of us experience this all the time. Completers. They don't let the other person think because the silence is discomforting for them. Selective listeners are those who zero in only on a certain part of a conversation, or only that which is interesting for them or of interest to them. They will pay attention to that and not to the rest of the message. Okay, avoiders, who don't want to listen to anything that would create dissonance in their mind, that may not agree with their thought process. They just don't want to listen to this, and such people also we have met in our lives. Avoiders. Defensive listeners are those who are always, they are always worried that everyone here in this room is out to criticize them. So they are always on the defensive, always, taking that position of defense, always trying to defend whatever they are saying. These are defensive. And attackers, of course, are on the other end, of defenders. The attackers are ready to attack. They wait for the speaker to make a mistake and they say, "No, no, no. मैंने पहले कहा था ये गलत है, आप ये गलत कह रहे हो." So there are people like that. They are always ready to attack. So they are critical listeners and attackers. Okay. So this is how our pattern of listening is. You can easily make out in this kind of scenario who are good communicators. Can attackers be good communicators? If you are an attacker, then certainly when you speak, you are on the defensive all the time. Because if you are used to attacking other people, then when you are speaking, you expect that everybody would be attacking you. And so you become a defensive speaker. Defensive, like I told you in the last session, defensiveness is a barrier in communication. That does not make you a very good speaker. If you are selective listener, then certain things you have never heard because you have removed them from your listening process. And those things which you have never heard are the words probably and sentences and sounds which you cannot articulate. So once again, you cannot be a very good speaker. If you are monopolistic, then you are not listening at all. You are only speaking. Then whatever errors you have in your speech, you will continue to repeat them all the time by monopolizing conversations. So you will not be a good speaker again. Fraudulent, of course, are not listening to anything. So they are going to be a person who starts, being a fraudulent listener would be a fraudulent speaker, and the problem of projection will arise when they start to speak. So listening is so important. To be a good listener, you have to have empathy, you have to have patience, and you have to have a lot of observation and concentration. You have to let the speaker finish talking in order to respond. So not interrupt anybody's speech, not evaluate the speaker all the time, but to pay attention to what is being said. Non-verbal communication, this involves all the other aspects besides speaking. The words which are not articulated through speech but through gestures fall under non-verbal communication. Again, there are 4 types of non-verbal communication that I have outlined here. Proxemics is how you use your space. See, since we are all speakers, we get a stage, fortunately for us. It can be a small rostrum or a dais or a lectern. It can be one with a mic or without a mic, doesn't matter. But there is always a stage that has to be used by the speaker. And most of us, right now, I'm limited by this, so I'm standing behind this. But in the classroom, there is no such limitation. You can actually move around a lot. So how well you use the space would fall under proxemics. A confident speaker would be very happy to use the entire stage that has been provided to him, and in fact would be able to close the distances between him and his audience whenever the need arises. So proxemics. Kinesics is how you use your body language for effective communication. Do you have positive gestures? Do you use your hands and face in a proper manner to relate with the audiences? Are you capable of doing that? That would fall under kinesics. Facial and eye behavior, of course, you understand. Movements that add cues for the receiver. The way you would want your audience to relate to you can be done through the use of your face and eye movements. How you use your face would actually decide how the audience is going to react to your messages. And that can be done very effectively. Paralanguage is when you change your pitch or tone or loudness or tempo of your speech for effectiveness. The example of paralanguage: pitch, volume, rate, pauses, non-fluencies, and silence. These are cues to your language. Whichever language you are using, whether English or any other language, pauses, pitch, volume is there part of every language. Okay, how this is used, that is called paralanguage. Influences of pronunciation: words which you are familiar or not familiar. If you are not familiar, you cannot pronounce. If you are familiar, of course, then you use them more. Some words you use more because you just know them. You know their pronunciation, some you don't. Circumstances: sometimes you can be very articulate in some circumstances, in some you cannot be. Of course, we've discussed in the last session. Emotional state. Familiarity with content: if you don't know the content of your presentation, then there is going to be a problem in articulating and also in pronouncing. Expertise in discussion, of course, this is understandable. Good listening skills, we just discussed this. Apt use of silence, use of paralanguage. Now, how to be a better speaker? Let's see how we can be better speakers. To bring clarity to any discussion on matters where you are able to bring clarity. There has to be a desire to add something new to the conversation that is going on. Uh, Sometimes, in meetings and in seminars, you must have seen that people speak just because they have to be heard. Most of the times, we are speaking because we want to be heard. We want to be noticed as the person who said something. We are speaking just to make noise. This may not be us, but there might be people who are doing that, and all of us have seen and noticed such people doing that. They just want to be heard. So that's not a very good idea. That, how much ever you articulate you are, if you don't add to the ongoing conversation, you are not really a useful conversationalist. So you have to add something. Let others speak about things that they are expert in and add to that discussion through articulate questions. Do your research and know the alternative perspectives, but be willing to quit sharing when you move outside your current knowledge. See, कई बारी हम कहते भी हैं कि जब वो बोलते हैं तो वो अपनी असलियत बता देते हैं. We do that. So if you're not well researched, if you're not well prepared, then just being articulate is not going to help you. So you have to have your research in place. If you don't know your subject well, then nothing can help you really. So know your subject becomes the most important aspect of speech. So speech, including use of your articulators, you may know all of those things, but if you don't know the content, then a lot is lost over there. Think before you speak. This is something our parents and our teachers and everybody has always taught us. Think before you speak. To think before you speak, you need to use pauses well. What happens when we are making a speech? We tend to use verbal pauses. That actually takes away a lot of merit from our speech. Verbal pauses in the sense we